So I've just taken the tomatoes out of this polytunnel. It's always a great time of year for me because I'm getting a bit fed up of tomatoes, at least in the quantities that we've been harvesting them. I'm always pleased to get the polytunnel completely empty so I can kind of really start with a clean slate for autumn and winter and spring. This year I've also put most of my stuff that I needed to start earlier than October time. I've started it outside in containers, and I've got chard, celery, peas, strawberries, parsley, all sorts of stuff out there, and I'll bring that in when it gets a little bit colder, but for now it's really thriving outside. That means that I've really truly got a clean slate in this polytunnel. So I've just got my soil beds, which are open bottomed, and polythene basically. So I'll just step you through my process for getting the polytunnel ready for replanting, and pretty much starts with giving everything a good clean. And so I wipe it all down, get all the mud off all the plastic and all of that sort of thing, wipe off any algae and things like that I can see, and then I'll give it a good spray with this stuff, Algon Organic, Path and Patio and Deck Cleaner, but it's okay for polythene as well. I don't want it to get on the plants though, so it's important that the polytunnel is completely empty of anything living. So once I've got everything clean like that, and I'll give it another rub down after a couple of days to remove any further algae. Now ideally with this stuff, you'd leave it on permanently, but I don't want to leave it on because then I want to spray, once it's all super clean, with this stuff, which is Sun Clear. And this is expensive stuff. I can't remember exactly how much it is, but it's like £20 or something like that for just this little bottle. But this bottle is enough to spray the inside of this whole of the polytunnel, and also all my cold frames and all of my low tunnels. And you spray it on the inside, and it's a hydrophilic coating. So the benefit of this is that what happens in a polytunnel and in any sort of undercover space with polythene or glass is that you get condensation on the inside, especially in winter, and that condensation forms droplets on the inside of the polythene, and they drip down onto your plants. So there's a few disadvantages with that. One is the droplets, they hang around for a very long time, so they reduce light transmission, and they also, as I say, drip on your plants. And plants, although they don't mind it in summer, but they really don't like being dripped on in winter. You often get like stem rot and things like that, especially on things like lettuce. And of course, it's just not nice to be in this environment. I spend a lot of time kind of chilling out in the polytunnel. I don't want to be dripped on all the time. So what this hydrophilic coating does is it takes a droplet like that on the polythene surface and it spreads it out like that. And so it's hydrophilic, so basically it loves water, so it spreads it out, reducing the surface tension of the water effectively, so that the water forms a really thin layer across the whole of the inside of the polytunnel surface and the cold frames and the low tunnels. And when it's a thin film like that, A, it doesn't reduce light transmission as much, B, it doesn't drip as much, and C, it evaporates really quickly because a thin layer evaporates a lot faster than a big droplet. So I really like it. It also means that for my cold frames, low tunnels and things like that, I can see through them, which is really useful to see what's going on, because otherwise all you see is droplets, and they disrupt and scatter the light so much you can't see what's going on, so you have to open the beds up in order to look through and see what's happening. So that's phase 2 effectively. So at that point, what I've done is I've done all the stuff that's affecting the structure of the polytunnel. I missed out saying I got a hose pipe and I blast every square inch of the inside of this polytunnel before I put the Algon and the Sun Clear on. And that just kind of dislodges all the spiders, all the spider eggs, all the dross basically that's kind of accumulating in all the nooks and crannies. It gets it all on the ground where I can get it all swept away. So at that point, it's all clean. Now, what I don't do is I don't sterilise the inside of the tunnel. And, some people will use J's fluid or something like that. Now, my view on this is probably a bit naive or a bit contentious, but it is my view. And my view is that I've never really had any significant disease in this polytunnel. So I consider the microbiome of this polytunnel to be healthy. So that's the natural presence of fungi and bacteria and all of that. And little insects, nematodes, arthropods, whatever. So I don't disrupt that microbiome, basically kill it completely, and then let a new one regrow. Because the new one that regrows might be completely different to the one that you had originally. Now, if you had a lot of disease in your polytunnel, that might be what you want. But if you haven't had really any significant disease, you don't really want to kill, this is just my contentious view, you don't want to kill a healthy microbiome and let a new, potentially unhealthy one regenerate over winter. So that's my rationale for not over cleaning things. Obviously this stuff it's going to kill some stuff. It's obviously to kill algae, but I don't want. The trouble is with algae on the inside of your polytunnel, or on the outside as well, is it significantly reduces light levels, and obviously that's the last thing you want to do or have happen over winter. You need every tiny little bit of light that you can get in here, because the polytunnel already reduces natural light levels from about down to about 85%, I think, of what you get if you were outside. Now obviously that's more than made up for by the extra heat that you've got in here and the extra protection from high winds and all of that sort of thing. But even so, that's anyway, so that's my kind of compromise approach anyway. So at this point now, as I say, I've finished the structure of the polytunnel. It's all nice and clean. There's nothing in here. I put my shelf up. I've got a little shelf that runs along here, and that just slots down the side of the polytunnel for most of the time, out the way. And I need that because I'm going to start bringing all my seedlings into this polytunnel pretty soon. In fact, they're all in here now. But what I've also done is I've dropped a lot of water into this polytunnel, because as I said, I've been spraying water, with a high-speed jet of water all over the place. There's a lot of water dropped down, but there's also lots of drips from the sun clear and from the algon. And at this point now, I want to get all of that drained through the beds, and I want to get those beds rehydrated. I've not been watering in this polytunnel for about a month because I've been trying to ripen off all my tomatoes, and so the beds are absolutely bone dry, even down to like 8 inches down. They're absolutely bone dry. So I got to rehydrate. So I do that with rainwater typically, because we've had a lot of rain over the last few weeks. So all my water butts are full, and basically just watering and watering and watering, not all on the same day. I just do it like over 2 or 3 days, and just give each square meter 2 or 3 watering cans, so about maybe as much as 9 watering cans or something like that per square meter, which is kind of what you need to rehydrate sort of down to that sort of depth. But before I do that, I'll also do all the fertilizing, because I want to wash some of that fertilizer down into the soil. And the fertilizer that I'm using is blood, fish and bone, a bit of well rotted cow manure, and some lime. And I want a bit of lime in the soil at this point, because I want to prevent tip burn on the lettuces, and that's generally down, I think, to a calcium deficiency. Maybe not a calcium deficiency in the soil, I must admit. Sometimes it's the inability of the lettuces to uptake the calcium that's already in the soil, given the soil condition, which is cold. And so sometimes some varieties, particularly Grenoble Red, in my soil, I do get a little bit of tip burn. It's really annoying, really annoying. So, I tried various different ways to get around it, sometimes by spraying with a calcium supplement. This time I've just put a bit of extra lime in. I'm still going to spray with this calcium supplement. We'll just see how it goes. but it does seem to be an issue with some varieties, and it is soil dependent. I think it's particularly an issue here because of our really sandy soil. So then the final step is just to kind of let those wet beds kind of settle a little bit. And then today I'm watering in with nematodes, and I'm watering the fruit and veg protection nematode primarily to kill cutworms. I've got quite a few cutworms in here, I've noticed, so I want to get rid of those. And the pack that I've got, it's for 40 meters squared, which is more than enough for this polytunnel. So I'll also water all of the outdoor beds of things like pak choi and lettuce and other Asian greens. It also kills the carrot fly, and I've quite a lot of carrots in the beds at the moment. They're all netted, but it's nice to have belt and braces protection against carrot root fly, because if you leave it over winter, you know, and you've got carrot root fly in it, it's really going to mess up your carrots. So that's the first thing. And the other one is saying slugs. And I do two things for slugs in this polytunnel. The first thing is I kind of sweep everything up. I look under all the containers to make sure there's no slugs under the containers, sweep up all the edges of the beds and things like that, so there's not many places for slugs and snails to hide. So the second thing is I water with the slug nematode from Nemesis. And the third thing that I do is I just scatter slug pellets down the backs of the bed, so not on the soil itself, just in the gap between the polytunnel and the raised beds. And so that takes care of any kind of slugs that are kind of hiding underneath the can't remember the wooden battens anyway, basically, that surround the polytunnel base. Now when I'm applying the nematodes, the way I find that's the easiest thing to do is I just get one of my dip tanks, which is about 300 litres, and I just pour the nematodes into that and stir them up with a stick. And that means I've then got a nicely evenly distributed 300 litres of slug nematode and fruit and veg protection nematode, and then I just dip my watering can into that and water, just as I ordinarily would all of the undercover beds. I've watered some of the outside beds as well that have got slug and snail sensitive crops in. I just find that's really easy. It's much easier than kind of trying to measure everything out, because it's very easy to estimate, you know, one watering can at a time per metre, which lets me water 30 square metres of bed. So I think that is pretty much it. The polytunnel is now ready for planting. I'll talk about that in another video. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.